As we continue our first night of Red Ink Week, there is no question that for too long, politicians of all stripes have looked at government coffers as a bottomless pit of wealth. Spending other people's money is always easier than parting with your own, and that's precisely the problem. If we're ever going to get out of this hole we keep digging for ourselves, or they keep digging for us, the mentality of how we govern has got to change here in Washington and in state capitals all over the country as well. Our next guest has been in the front line of that charge to make politicians accountable to the taxpayers, something he did as governor of Minnesota. Joining us now from Minneapolis is the author of Don't Start the Revolution Without Me. And Jesse Ventura, I wouldn't think of it because I'm sure you'd be into front deck all the way. Good to see you again.
Good to see you again. Nice to be here.
Well, you know, in just the past couple of months since we've seen each other, the folks in the Capitol right behind me have gone out of their way to do exactly what you said they shouldn't do, which is putting themselves more in charge, spending more of our money, and reducing our freedoms. What do we do as a country to combat that?
Well, I think, you know, I've harped on it for years and years. We've got to stop voting for Democrats and Republicans. I mean, they're in this together. They both spend equally as bad. It seems that the Democrats are more cash and carry. They like to reach directly in your wallet, where the Republicans seem to charge it and put it on the national debt and hope to pay it off later with another generation. When I was governor of Minnesota, I ran on a unicameral platform, one house. And at the state level, you don't need two houses. One house works. Now, at the federal level, of course, you need two. Otherwise, California would run the nation, and we know what a disaster that could be. But I couldn't even get them to take a floor vote on putting it on the ballot. And the reason I bring this up is because the more people you have elected and the larger, like in Minnesota, we have 201 state legislators, which is bigger than California's, even though their population is 30 million more than ours is, or better. Every time they pass a law, that comes with a price tag. It requires to implement that law, there's going to have to be funding spent on it. So we've got to get these people to stop passing more laws. That would be a great start.
Well, passing more laws, and Governor, it's also creating bureaucracies. If it was just a matter of writing a check, of cutting a check in order to solve the problem of poverty, fine, you know, cut a check. But they create these huge bureaucracies, each one of which has about 2 or 3 buildings in this town of Washington, filled with hundreds or thousands of bureaucrats, each one of whom have pensions that last until the day they die.
We also have to pay for the party caucus staffs. That in Minnesota, that comes out of the taxpayers' end. We pay. Now, why should my tax dollars, when I'm a third-party guy, go to support the Democrats and Republicans who I oppose? And yet they take my tax dollars and give it to them.
A specific question, though, then how do we make it more difficult? Because right now it's pretty easy for them to spend money and for them to create laws. How do we make it more difficult for them to do that?
Well, the only way is at the ballot box. Stop electing them. Then they'll get terrified, you know, because it's all about getting elected and control. See, the problem is these two parties have put their parties first and the country second. And in fact, the country's third. Special interest is second. So, and the case in point, when George Bush went for a bailout, all the Republicans voted for it. A few months later, when President Obama does it, all the Republicans now don't vote for it. That clearly shows you that they vote to give power to their parties, and they're not doing what's necessarily correct for the country.
By the way, just a slight correction. Not all Republicans voted for the bailouts, the TARP bailouts and everything. We've got a couple coming up right here on Scoreboard that we want you to pay attention to. Listen to.
But as a whole, I'm speaking as a whole. You know, as a whole, Republicans supported the Bush bailout and they opposed the Obama bailout, when essentially they were the same things. It shows you how it works.
I agree. They were essentially the same thing. But, Governor, we have to be realistic. There is not a third party right now. I mean, if there was, I think I'd be one of the first persons to pull the lever.
Well, you know why that is? It's because the media helps the two-party system to survive. They won't give.
Well, not this
Why
media.
was it? Wait a minute. Why was it when Ross Perot got 1 out of 5 votes in 92, 20%, he wasn't allowed to debate in 96? Where was the media on that?
Well, this particular medium wasn't there at that particular time, but it is now, and we'd be happy to give coverage to a viable third-party candidate. Where is he?
Well, again, you know, we've got to climb the ladder again and try to make that available out there. I protest vote. I think that in every election, be it local, statewide, or national, they should give you the option of none of the above. And people laugh at that, but what that is, that's a protest vote. It's a vote of no confidence in your government. And I would be willing to bet there would be certain elections where none of the above would actually win.
You know, I think that's a terrific idea. In fact, they do that they do that in Italy, and very often none of the above wins the vote. But what do you do then?
Wouldn't that send a message? I mean, imagine if you got elected to office, but you lost to none of the above. Well, that would make me rethink a few positions. It's a start. You can't climb the mountain without taking the first step.
That's true. That's true. That's true. Well, maybe
and
that's the place to begin.
You've got to take these small steps in which to achieve what you want to achieve. You can't just leap over the mountain and say it's so, especially when the two parties control everything about the system.
Gotcha. We got to leave it at that. Governor Jesse Ventura. Governor, you're welcome back anytime. Thanks very much.
Let me finish by saying this. When I ran for governor, I only raised $300,000. That's fiscal control. We only had one person paid. All the rest were volunteers. But they don't like you to know that stuff.
If you cut the fat out of this government, out of what's going on behind me, there wouldn't be a city of Washington, D.C.
Well, I could do it if you'd elect me president, but unfortunately I'm not running.
I guess your wife won't let you. Someday you got to talk your wife into doing that, all right, into letting you run.
My wife has nothing to do with it. She has nothing to do with it. Surfing. The ocean don't lie. Thanks, guys.